Go.
Hey, it's 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the selection of a chair.
I nominate Jim.
Second.
Other nominations? Do you accept the nomination?
I do.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Go for the minutes.
It's all you.
That was
My job is done.
Enthusiastic.
All right.
Sharing.
So we are on to the reorganization of the board, which is done. We are now on to the Pledge
No,
of
we're not
Allegiance.
done.
Oh, you want to do the whole
Yeah.
We have
We
new
can
members.
do it later if you want to.
I honestly want to have a little bit more. Do we want to have a long discussion about the assignments?
You want to table this?
Why
don't we?
We
Yeah,
can do it after the presentations.
yeah. I think we want to kind of talk about like whether we break this into committees and such.
Sounds good.
So moving on to Pledge of Allegiance. Ask if you join me to the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Good evening. I'd first like to welcome Gigi Cliff to the board.
Thank you.
And extend a continued welcome to Nate Oxnard. Congratulations on winning your seats.
Thank you.
So the first order of business are the minutes of March 6, 2019. What is the wish of the board?
Move is written.
Second.
Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
One abstain, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Public comments. Seeing as there are none, agenda review. Since we've already kind of made one change, why don't we officially say that we want to talk about the reorganization of the board a little bit further down after the presentations. We have a couple of presentations tonight. We have a data presentation from Chris Motika. We have Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission here. We also have the teachers here.
They're part of the data presentation. There's two.
Oh,
It's all the same.
so you guys are sticking around for a while. Do we want to possibly well, the paving discussion is in there.
Right,
So-
they're up here with,
They're also down here.
Data.
Okay.
They're doing a data
So
presentation, they're
is
not
this-
here as a staff report.
Okay, so that's just redundant. Okay, all right.
So move the reorganization to G, 4G.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
All right.
And then I have just, probably do it in, under informational, just an update on the lighting audit we ordered at our last meeting.
Okay.
I have a couple items for informational as well.
All right.
I have a couple of changes.
What would you like?
Number 10 has 2 items
Okay.
under appointments and resignations, and then there are 2 consent items.
Okay. Is there anything else we would like to change? I don't think we're going to make anybody stay longer than they need to, except for the administration. All right, so on to consent items. You have 2.
There's one that's a staff request that you may want to address after non-public session if you want to discuss the request. The second request, I had put something in the drive for you that Kristen and Brian were able to provide. We had a tabletop exercise with Homeland Security, Fire, Police, Emergency Management with the town all around this table. One of the items that came up was our inability to communicate with emergency personnel and if something's going on. That was something that we didn't get grant funded for. We had worked with Fire and Police to do a quote for 25 radios that would allow us to be on the same channel. We could switch to an emergency channel and communicate with Fire and Police. So I let everyone at that table know that I'd bring the request before the board and ask for your permission to transfer funds to order those radios ahead of our next exercise.
Is there a use for those radios beyond
Oh yes, they can be used, we were planning on ordering 25 and put them throughout the building so they can be used for anything in the building. And then an additional feature is the ability to communicate with emergency personnel.
Don't you have existing radio?
Yeah,
We-
currently we have roughly 11 walkie-talkies. They have a range of like, I get from here to the backfield, so
Yeah.
and after that gets sketchy. It wouldn't work if there was an emergency and we had to go like George B. White in a town. That it wouldn't cover that distance. So
So these,
they're good for the building, but
I don't
That's
believe
pretty-
they're compliant either. Aren't they just simple two-way radios?
Yeah.
Just for
They're,
recharging.
they're
just for
not. They're not
recharging.
compliant.
So, this is what we're looking at.
This is the original quote that we had.
Okay.
We would need to get updated figures, so I would just ask for your approval of the 25 radios. And there's an antenna.
I was gonna say, it looks like there's two
Yeah.
parts. So you have like a base station type setup and
Yeah.
antennas, and then you have the radios themselves,
That's right.
And it's some sort of system within the building to help.
repeated or.
Yeah.
And these would replace the existing radios at the same time?
correct.
I've since received an email from Denny Gregg, who got in touch with Matt Fisher, and he was able to get in touch with the gentleman who did this quote, and he feels that he can still offer what
Oh, great.
within the limited. He was away, he
Couldn't update
pretty,
it.
almost 100% could guarantee that he could work within the parameters that he set for us back in September, August.
Roughly 21.
Was this sent out to bid in September, August?
It was not, because it was based on that we were
It was
trying
the
to get grant
grant
money.
Yeah, the fire department did it, looking for the best radios that we could,
Yeah.
that would work with.
I have talked to Denny though about the fact that we probably would have to go out to bid, and she's gonna get in touch with Matt about a couple of other names that people can
Okay.
contact.
Yeah, I'm personally comfortable with it, but it just, we can go to bid because I don't know.
Is there any chance that, since we are coordinating with the town on this, is this going to be useful for the town? Is this the same system the town is using?
It's going to be compatible with their radios. I don't know if they're the same radios, but they can program these to work with theirs.
Okay.
That's part of the point of
matching
it.
frequencies.
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
Voodoo and Gizmos and that.
The magical things they do.
And there is, there's no chance for a grant? This is, I mean,
The infrastructure funds ran out. My understanding is they're going to be depositing more funds into that pot, but we don't know where we would
Who's-
fall.
who's
That
the
was
state?
that was the governor's initiative. He put the infrastructure grant in place to help the schools around the state.
Okay.
And most of the schools have received funding. at this
Okay.
point. And we did receive
So-
some funding, but then the money ran out.
okay.
So we would need a motion to go to bid on this.
So I would,
And do you want specifics? Does it have to be a specific amount of stuff, or you?
I think you send it out to bid based on this.
Yeah,
Based on
those
this.
would be-
Results of the bid come back, we can then make a determination to award in that case.
We'd probably need to work with police and fires because they know which radios
Yeah.
will work and be
Absolutely.
compatible.
Okay, so I move to request that we publish a bid for the radio equipment,
Based on the recommendation.
based on the recommendation of police and fire.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, so, so this came through the discussion with the town. Our police and fire departments want us to have this so that we can keep our kids safe during a,
Well, I think it came out of the Homeland Security.
Homeland Security too,
Homeland Security
yeah,
recommendation.
our visits that we get updated every couple of years.
okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The other consent item, do you have a handout on that, or we should talk about it in a moment?
Non-public.
Okay. Data presentation. Ms. Fontica? Heidi and Eric.
Hey,
Chris
Erica
is just
and
gonna
Chris.
pull up the presentation for us since he's already logged in. Just so you can have a visual of our fantastic graphs.
They were awesome. They were fantastic.
Yes, hi, graphs.
It's the one that's in the drive.
knew you would like
I
that.
was telling Chris earlier, when I heard about this, I totally.
Ken, do we need to
We do.
We
Ken,
actually
can we
pulled
give you a few minutes to
Nope, nope.
acclimate to the graphs?
I'm good.
Oh, goodness. So we are just here to give an update on our Eureka implementation, and we have crunched some early numbers to help with that, and because it's hard to just look at numbers, we put those numbers into pretty graphs, and our presentation will highlight some of the trends and a look at how we're doing with our implementation. There are a couple things we want to just highlight before we get started, I guess. I did pull data for the school on using our STAR data. So we do our district test, which is our STAR assessment. We do it in math and reading. We do that for benchmarking 3 times a year, and that's at our district level. So we can't compare to the state on that test. It is a normed test, so we have our percentiles, but we don't have like a comparison with the state for that test. We are eager actually to do this with our SAS data that's coming up in the spring with our state test. So we'll compile similar information and send that your way as well, because we're eager to look at that too. So I wanted to say that, and we're primarily focusing, although I did compile data K to 8, or we don't give this test in kindergarten, so it's 1st to 8th grade. We are focusing for our presentation on 1st through 5th grade, because we did not implement Eureka yet in the middle school. So our charts do go up through 8th grade, but we are not talking about the middle school at this time. We're talking about our growth in K to 5. Of course.
Okay, so when we came last year and talked about, how we came to our decision and looking at Eureka, we kind of had highlighted some of the components that we were looking for in a math program. And so just kind of revisit those components for you before we start looking at data and then some teacher survey results. So we were really, in our math program, we were really looking for strong Common Core alignment. We were looking for a strong assessment package, increased rigor, cohesiveness that would span across the grades, so kind of bringing all of our language, making that all cohesive, all of our modeling and all of that kind of spanning across K through 5 at this point. Differentiation and intervention components, so that was important to us when choosing a math program. Parent engagement and support, teacher usability, and professional development, both initial and then ongoing. And so these were all the components, if you remember last year when we came, and I know we have some new members, so you might not, but these were all the components that when we looked at the different math programs, specifically the investigations, the new addition, we really kind of tried to look at each component and what the math program offered, and did it offer what we wanted. So we'll kind of come back to this at the end of the presentation with the teacher survey results, because a lot of these, some of them can be measured through like standardized testing, but a lot of it, like, are the lessons cohesive, we thought would speak more to how the teachers were feeling. They're the ones teaching this, and so we also compiled some of that data. So Heidi's going to get into the actual graphs and the numbers, and then I'll end with the survey results that we put out to teachers.
So my apologies that the graphs I'm going to display here are going to cause you to flip a little bit through your presentation. I'll try to, if you look up in the top right-hand corner of your page, that will tell you the name of the page I need you to be on. So we're going to start by looking on the proficiency by student cohort graph, which will, so we're not going to look at the hard data, we're just going to talk about it on the graphs, and the title would be % of students proficient by student cohort. And the things that are noteworthy on here, we were paying particular attention to our grades 2 and grade 5. So this is following those student groupings as they progress up through the grade levels. We took a close look at grades 2 and 5 because this is their second year of Eureka for them. So we would hope to see the most growth in those grade levels. And in fact, we did see the most growth in those grade levels. So that was pretty exciting for us that grade 2 should have at least all right, so grade 2 shows that the growth there, and grade 5 shows a substantial growth since the last year's data. And further to note is that most of our students and all of our grade levels in K-5 except for grade 4 are scoring above the 75th line, which means that 75% or more are proficient at that grade level. That's pretty promising.
A clarifying question. So when we were looking at the grade 2 bars, the first bar is this same student's data from first grade.
Correct.
So how they progressed over the course of the year. Okay.
Yes.
So the graphs are labeled, that's a good point, like student cohort. So we did two different data analysis. We analyzed by cohort, so groups of students, and we also analyzed by the actual just grade level. So when you look at that, it's a little different data, and that's important to know. So thank you, Nate.
Why do you think grade 4 is struggling?
Sorry, ask me.
Why do they think grade 4? Why do we think grade 4 is struggling?
Yeah.
So grade 4 is a benchmark grade level year. There's a lot of learning that happens at that year, and we are just digging into the whys of why those trends aren't showing more growth than what we would expect. Yes.
Just as a teacher, I mean, as there's, with especially the small sample size like our school has, there's so many environmental conditions, so many things you just can't control for in the classroom that a particular, as a cohort of students moves through, there will be some that they just, each class has its own personality, and so I'm part of this is
Right, and I accept that as natural variability, or organic variability, which you would see throughout every grade at some point. But I guess the point of my asking was if there was one element or one or two elements in that particular cohort that you thought stood out. But it sounds to me like you haven't got that deep.
We
yet.
have
We
not.
haven't.
We are
Yeah.
seeing the trends and asking the same questions.
Right.
We also know that the grade 4 group was the last year's grade 3 group that was large class sizes, and we added a grade 4 teacher this year to cut down those class sizes. So whether or not like our data this year would show, like Heidi said, we're interested to see our stats data for this year. That will really give us better information too, as to like where grade 4 is trending.
Yeah.
So because they did have that, tough year last year in terms of the class sizes.
Something else to note, just to keep in the back of your mind, the yellow bar, which represents, so these are all our spring dates, in case you couldn't figure that out from the 2019, but, it's actually January. These are January
winter
measures, winter measures.
Yeah.
So the 2017 year, so that would be the January year of our 2016-17 school year, was our first year of implementing foundations and Lucy Calkins in literacy school-wide, or actually not school-wide, K to 3.
K to 3.
So when I was first running this data, I was like, oh my gosh, what happened in 2017? Something must have been going on. And so we did some digging, and you'll see that just is a natural occurrence when you focus all of your teachers' efforts and training and professional development in one area. Sometimes you see a decline in other areas. So I just wanted to put that up. Okay, so now the next graph will be another student cohort graph. And this is average percentile rank. There's two graphs on this page, so it'll actually look like this in your packet. The first one, the average percentile rank in the winter. So noteworthy in here is that every grade level in grades 2 through 5 shows an increasing trend, with the 2019 average percentile rank being the highest of the measures, except for in grade 5, where it's just slightly above the average. So, So you can see that we've increased in scores from the last measures on every grade level. This is again following the student group, so we don't test in kindergarten, first grade. This is their first snapshot of the look. But so second grade, this is their first grade year, and on. And you can see there's an upward trend in all grade levels. And if you look at specifically the growth from last year to this year, you can see there's an increase in student percentile rank, which is how students are doing on the test. This is the average percentile rank for students scoring
in comparison to all kids taking the test, right, across the state or in the past, like when we had STAR across the country.
Yeah.
So, and also kind of to note that our percentile rankings are pretty high once again. Like, so, we're past the 60th percentile, and even reaching up in some grade levels towards, the 75th, which is a really high percentile ranking. So you can think of it like 75%, or your kids are scoring higher than 75% of everybody that takes the test.
Right.
So that's how you rate it. So that's a high percentile.
Yep.
Who set the 60th as the benchmark?
It's not our benchmark, actually. I cut at the 50th. STAR reports that students who are scoring in the 50th percentile or higher are most likely to perform proficient on the state level testing. And so our 50 is our cut mark, and all of our scores are higher than the 60th, which is even higher. But I just chose that because it's a nice line.
And sorry, just to just piggyback off that, and we don't set the cut scores. So like STAR set that 50th cut score.
Right.
We didn't cut it at 50 there because we were actually proud that we were at 60. So that's why we highlighted that.
Well, it's good to reach.
Yeah,
Are
exactly.
you seeing that alignment with proficiency for state testing where that 50, that ratio?
Yes. So over the last, probably 3 solid years, maybe 4 years now, I've taken a close look at our STAR data and how it compares to our state testing data, and there has been a big discrepancy between how our STAR data looks and how our state data looks until last year. So last year, the state test changed when there were some major changes that happened in it, and now I'm seeing a much closer alignment between our STAR data and last year's scores. So if I look back 3 years, there was a big gap between our proficiency levels, yes, and now that gap is closing. So and that's why actually STAR recommends that, says that the students scoring in the 40th percentile and above will become proficient on a test, but that's not what I was seeing. So after many conversations back and forth with the company, I think 50th is a closer cut, and most of their reports are run at the 50th percentile. So we cut at this as a district at the 50th percentile. This is closer. It was prior to that, we would have to look at the 80th percentile, like students who are scoring on STAR above the 80th would then be proficient on a test. That's what our data was showing prior to last year, but now last year it's much closer. It's much closer to the 50th.
And time will tell too on that one, like as we go. This is our second year with SAS. So like we really only have 1 year of looking at that. So
They'll change it as soon as the data gets consistent.
hopefully not, but
It is.
yeah.
I think that 60 mark is a closer representation of proficiency on the state test.
So STAR changed the test.
STAR did not change the test. It was the
State
state
test.
test.
The state test.
Yeah.
The state test changed. Okay.
Yeah. S back to SAS.
Yeah.
Right. I just didn't want them.
It makes it really hard to compare data too.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, STAR has changed nothing. Just
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna keep moving because I know you guys have a really lengthy agenda. I know, and actually, this is a good segue to say that like you have all of these numbers and data, and I know last time we did this, you had all those numbers, and we got some great feedback. Like, so if you want to digest this data later too, and write on the packets and send it back to us, we like scour through your comments, and we can come back and answer more questions or however that works. So don't feel like you have to get all your questions out. Okay, so this graph is again the last one. It's right next to the same page. Looking at student cohort, but this is looking at growth from fall to winter. So the blue bar is showing the fall achievement, and this is percent of students who are proficient. So in the blue, we're showing the number of students who are proficient in the fall, and that would be the 50th percentile marking 50% proficient. And then the green bar is now where the winter scores are. So this graph is a little bit hard to see, so we added some highlights so you could look at it. So again, following student cohorts, if you look at the most recent bar for each grade level band, that's what the arrows are pointing at, you'll see that we are achieving the most growth in those areas or reaching the highest percentile. Right. The exception is in grade 3. We have a small growth there, but they are like more than 75% of students are proficient, and they are increasing still. So I know Kristen had given some preliminary numbers and about are we growing, how's our data looking, and this, like, we are growing at a faster rate than we have been, which is good. I mean, it's great to see. And any mark here that doesn't have a blue bar, it's because there was insufficient testing data in that fall.
We have to ask how you got a negative number in 7th grade.
There was a decrease in their score. Yeah.
So
No, how did
Or
that-
no,
Hang on, I did know that
Yeah,
when I was looking at, I'll get back to you on why that is. There was
Kinda
a,
jumps out
It's just
at
showing
you.
negative growth.
I know, yeah, it's showing negative
It is
growth,
showing
that's why it
negative
is. And I can't remember, I had that worked out, but now I can't remember. But there is
No,
negative growth in that year.
Right.
Okay, now we're gonna switch to, so that was all like following student group growth, just like the students as they progress, but it's important to look at grade level growth and how we're performing just at that grade level. We hope to be seeing our averages coming up, right? So we hope to be seeing our students reaching higher and higher. This one is talking about the percent of students who are proficient at every grade level. And you can see that in grades 1, 3, 4, and 5, we are seeing a significant jump in the percent of students proficient from winter of last year. And then further than that, you can see across the board, we are 75% or more of our students are proficient at every grade level. So that's,
except
except for grade 4, which they're approaching.
And obviously, this is first run at the review after you guys have started with the Eureka.
Yep.
But and that's 1 through 5, right?
Yep.
K through 5.
K through 5.
It's nice to see the trend.
It is,
Yeah.
it was
It also-
promising to see.
It also highlights the other end of
Yes.
It sure does. Yep,
Big
so,
problem. 6, 7, 8.
yep, so we actually are planning on carrying our adoption up next year. So 6th grade will be adopting Eureka next year, and I think this shows evidence of a need for a program change.
So you're gonna progress 1 year at a time? Is that-
The decisions haven't been finalized yet, but I think that's what we've been talking about, just following this grade level as they go up. But I can't say that final decisions by administration have been made on that end. That's not true.
We did find it really difficult. I'll just kind of piggyback. Like when we did our pilot last year, our grade 4 really had a hard time because they were missing a lot of the background information, and so they spent a lot of their year trying to not only teach what Eureka had set for grade 4, but then back teach because of course you needed to have all the prereq knowledge, especially with Eureka, because their cohesiveness is. I mean, kids are learning in kindergarten the language that they're going to hear in 4th grade. So they had to back teach a lot. So as we analyzed and looked at this, like, we definitely need to roll it out. But knowing that from our pilot in 4th grade, we were like, is it really the best plan to just plop it onto a 7th grader right now or plop it in an 8th grader next year? And so the current 6th grade coming up would have been our pilot 4th grade. So that's kind of cool. Like, so it just seemed more natural.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
I understand if a progression with the prerequisite knowledge is a valid approach, but I'd be interested in hearing what kind of support is going to be provided for those two grades
Mhm.
that are ahead,
Mhm.
that are not going to be part of the system. Like, how are we gonna
Are we gonna close
help
gaps?
Keep them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we can definitely share that plan. It's fun.
And in that vein, the NELMS report came back with some suggestions about considering competency type ideas. So then, to what extent does Eureka, have you looked at all at how does Eureka mesh with, I mean, the way, like, the competency mindset is very different in the classroom than I would assume. It's certainly the math class that I remember from high school, let's say, or middle school. So is Eureka
Competency.
compatible with competency-based mindset in teaching?
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, we are competency based throughout the whole school now, and our K-5 teachers are loving Eureka compared to our old program because it is so competency friendly. So it teaches to the big idea, and it's evident that it's teaching to the big idea, and the cohesiveness that just grows within each unit of study just leads itself right into alignment with the way that our competency education goes forward with it. So
And when you went through this process to select this one, you did touch base with the schools, you talked to Runlet. But I'm thinking Runlet just because of the high, so will you, do they use it as well in middle school? Okay.
yes, yeah, Runlet uses it, and then the math in Concord High is based in Eureka.
Okay.
So they've made their own curriculum, but it's very heavy with Eureka components, which was another draw for us in terms of like building those common models that students will see and be able to use and continue to use throughout. It's that cohesive piece that we were looking for. So then this was actually a really cool graph as well. This looks at average winter scale score over time at each grade level. And so we have been noticing some downward trends. So in grades 1, 3, and 5, it appears with our preliminary data that we are interrupting those downward trends with our adoption of Eureka. So you can see, like for example, the scaled score was dropping, and now the black line signifies the other point I wanted to note, which was that it's the high. Oh, no, I have to get back onto my.
Yeah, it's the highest that they've
the
scored.
highest that they've scored. Yeah. In this past look at data. So that was really, really cool. And then every single grade level, again, except for grade 4, is showing a strong increase in their average scale score from last year. So we are showing that growth that we were looking for, reaching those higher marks.
We're not looking at cohorts, we're just looking at.
This is just grade level.
Grade
Yep.
level, okay.
So just taking raw data from grade 1
Grade.
of the last 4 years.
On the start
On the
test?
start. All of this is start testing. So this was pretty cool. And then this is showing growth from fall to winter just by grade level look. So again, you can see that we're showing, so the most growth at those arrow marks, that's the current year of growth at each grade level. And we're showing the most growth or reaching the highest percentile. Percent proficient at each of those current years, which is showing us really good indications that Eureka is doing what we were looking for. Yes.
Why is the grade 2 one not highlighted? That looks like the biggest jump.
Grade 2 does have a high jump. It's actually, of course I can't get that. It's this bar right here though. So this has more growth than this bar, and my claim was it's reaching the highest percentile or making the most growth. So yes, there's great growth in grade 2 too. I just felt like it didn't match my statement is a little bit.
Right.
So I don't want to mislead. Okay.
Okay.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so we, of course, as we were compiling, you can't really judge a book by just a data cover. So we really wanted to hear some teacher feedback. Of course, we're embedded in it. So we kind of felt like we knew what teacher feedback was going to be, but we wanted to give the teachers an opportunity to give us anonymous feedback. And so you have all of the survey results in your packet. We're not going to go through each graph. It's pretty clear. They're nice pie graphs and the question and what the teachers answered. But we just kind of wanted to highlight a few successes and then kind of tell you some next steps that was beautifully brought out by this survey. So the first success was that they enjoy teaching Eureka Math. And that was a really big success for Height. We were really pleased to see those results. So we had 14 responses. That signifies one teacher said that they really could have cared less, neutral. But that was really exciting because in the beginning of the year, teachers were really scared. Change is hard, and we know that. And they have a lot of change going on right now with competencies. And so we really have worked hard to support them, and we just felt like, oh my gosh, they enjoy teaching Eureka, and we're not physically asking them. This was anonymous. So that's good to know. So that was really a great highlight, and we're seeing that in the classrooms too. You can see that they're enjoying what they're doing, and like if you look at some of the survey results, teachers are feeling those components that we were looking for, the cohesiveness, the rigor. They're feeling that this program is giving them that, and so that was really important. Like I said, those things are harder to measure just by testing. And so we were really pleased to see that as well.
It literally comes up in our daily conversation of, oh my gosh, I can't believe what I just taught today, and they got it.
Yeah.
Literally, we just came from a meeting this afternoon, and 3 of our teachers were like, would you believe what we taught today? I was teaching this stuff in 3rd grade, now I'm teaching 1st grade. I was teaching this stuff last year.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of cool.
Quite amazing. And so it was kind of neat too. Yeah. So we know that like assessment and differentiation, those were obviously 2 other really big components for us. And so the differentiation was really interesting. So it was interesting because, so this graph is basically showing that 66% of our teachers said yes, they're able to differentiate. And then, almost 33% are saying or neutral. And we kind of looked at that and talked about, we know that Eureka doesn't have per se an investigations type of differentiation. There's no separate lesson. The differentiation is embedded within the actual lesson. So whether the teacher chooses to assign students different problem sets or different pieces of what the Eureka lesson would expect students to do. But when we went to training last year, the training that the teachers received through the Boston Institute, Eureka Math came to the Boston, I don't know, wherever the institute. And the training was just it was a 2-day introductory training for Eureka Math to get teachers up and running for their first year. We sent Heidi and myself and then 2 of our lead teachers in Eureka to the 3rd day of training, and that was the differentiation training. We didn't send everybody because they don't suggest you to do that. Like, teachers have to teach it before they start changing it and before they start really feeling comfortable to do so. So we were really happy to see this because that's this summer. That's what teachers are going to be offered, is that now 3rd day of training, which will be the differentiation and assessment day of training. And so it's all grade specific work that the teachers will do in looking at their actual content and how they would be able to differentiate within the classroom but not change things. And so although this wasn't alarming to me when I saw this, I actually knew that this would probably come up as we don't really feel confident in our skills to differentiate this math program, and it was kind of nice to see because they haven't been trained. And although we do afternoon trainings, we offer morning times, but teachers really aren't when you're first teaching a program, you're really at a state of just learning it. And so they're not coming to us saying, how do I differentiate? They're coming to us and saying, how do I teach this lesson? So those are the questions that we received this year. And so that was good. We really wanted this program to be rolled out with fidelity and people not changing things because they felt like they needed to. So we thought that this was important to note that this is our next step this summer in sending a team of teachers, whoever wants to, into this now 3rd day of training that will really give them the skills to then next year take this program and, mold it to their students and what their students need. So I think those were the only 2 graphs. I didn't want to get we didn't want to, obviously, you have it all here. And like Heidi said, if there's any questions. The other nice thing that came out of the surveys was our math site is well used. Teachers feel well supported. These are all things that they say to us, but it's nice to know that it's anonymous and they could tell us their honest opinions, and what we could maybe do or provide for them differently. But teachers are feeling really supported, and the things that we put into place have really been beneficial and working for them. So. And that shows, I guess, through I like to teach Eureka Math, because that wouldn't be the case if they didn't feel that support. So there's other survey questions. There's also a page of just general comments the teachers wrote. Those are interesting too, but we don't have to run through it all. Any questions about that part?
The one that jumps at me is the comment that the teacher was saying that he had to borrow their own
baggies.
supplies.
Oh, Is that the first comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I don't know, I don't know, like, I'm not gonna defend that comment because that's not what we want to do, but, we definitely have put out there that, like, we are here, let us know what you need, and we will purchase it. The one thing that I can tell you personally, grade level struggled with is they're not planning ahead, like, not planning ahead. They're going module by module, right? So when they sit down to start a new mod, they are realizing like, oh my gosh, we need this, and this, and we have to put an order in through Didex, which takes through the office, we have to fill out a PO, there's a whole process. So sometimes, like, we've gone to the grocery store and bought things because the teachers needed them the next
Like
day.
a bag of rice.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff.
Like math materials, yeah, which I guess that,
Yeah.
You
and
wouldn't
that's
think of a
probably
bag of
what that
rice as
comment is
math
referring
materials.
to, is those
it was
straws.
baggies. Yeah.
Oh, baggies.
The baggies was a big thing for some of our lower grade levels because, like, everything is new. So they wanted student baggies for everything and groups, which we have baggies in our office. We have literally a 2,000 baggie box that's half full still. So it's just, I think maybe some disconnect. Like, if you needed it, then, like, we have it, but whether or not, I don't know. So. I guess
reimburse staff for that type of stuff.
Yeah, we get reimbursed, and the teachers do too. So they do.
Okay, so as long
They
as.
just submit their receipts.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
It's an actual really easy process. It's an easier process to be
It's
reimbursed.
easier than just buying and putting in a PO. probably.
Exactly.
Sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. And it's quicker. Like,
And the
if
staff
we need it the
knows
next
that
day, we
that's
can't
what
put in a
it is.
PO for it.
Okay, all right.
And the staff does know. Yeah, they do. They do know that. But we can definitely reiterate that, and as we move forward, we have now a next, large order for next year. Now that we've run through the program for a year, we, bought what Eureka, suggested, but, teachers, teams were like, we really could have used 2 of these instead of 1. We would have liked to, had smaller groups. So we're looking at that for next year and putting together. Yeah.
Any questions? Okay.
One final one, the math website, that's a support resource for them, like if they have questions about. Are you getting any feedback from that website as to what areas their teachers are going to the most as far as resource?
We have not looked at what teachers are using most on that website.
That'd be interesting.
Just so you know, the board did approve additional funding for website development support. So if that web developer could help you guys out with statistics, I'm sure she could help implement things. You might want to talk to her about that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Excellent.
So yeah,
Going
very
right
positive.
Yeah,
Okay.
Oh, no, yeah.
I had a question, and do you have any anecdotes from the teachers about what the students are thinking about the math? What are their impressions of how it's changed?
So we had this grand vision. I've been out on maternity leave to put this video together for you guys all year. I do have to say that was our vision at the beginning of the year because it's amazing to see, like Heidi said, not just the teachers saying oh my gosh, but it's happening in classrooms every day. So I think that it would be great to be our next visit here is a video
Of math students. Yeah.
of some anecdotes on student feelings and even some, we thought it would be really neat to take some footage of classrooms. There's some, because it's so cohesive, there's fluency drills that they do in 1st grade that you see in 4th grade. We'll highlight a lot of that at math night this year. But some footage of actual practicing, the actual practice happening. So that will definitely be our next focus.
In
Unfortunately,
general-
poor Heidi was I've been gone for a few months. So
In general,
didn't come
students are
together,
feeling
but-
accomplished.
Yeah.
They're feeling like they're reaching further and understanding. I teach a support 4th grade, a struggling learner group, and today was my first day of introducing fractions, and I was like, okay, today's objective, we're going to learn about fractions. I hate fractions. I'm like, okay, let me rewind. Earlier in the year, I was like, today we're going to introduce multiplication. I hate multiplication. And then 2 days later, you were like, I love multiplication. Thank you, Mrs. Cook. I'm teaching division. I hate division. I love division. Thank you. So it's kind of like the general gist of how they're getting. They're just feeling
More
that they're,
confident.
yeah, and then they're like showing some of the kids are like taking their work home and showing their older siblings, and those stories are funny too. The middle schoolers especially, I was like, wait, what, you're doing that, oh my gosh.
And I think like I'm noticing across the board, like the one big thing that this program is giving our kids is strategies. So even our biggest struggling kids, and I guess I can speak more for the lower grades, but like, you know, typically it would, like it's just a frustration as math gets harder, but they have tools now that they're using, and they're using them independently. Like I push into classrooms, and the kids that I've supported for 2 years and were supported before that, like I got this. Like I have this strategy, it works for me. Eureka works a lot like that, whereas Investigations was like, let's teach all of this, and then you know, you pick. Eureka really hones in on the most efficient strategy and really focusing the students to learn that one. And it's working for them. I mean, it's really amazing. So even our biggest strugglers that we would be most concerned with such a rigorous program, they are rising to the occasion for sure. And I think I would believe it's because of the tools that Eureka is giving them. And that's after 1 year. Like I am really, really excited to see. And I'm not working for Eureka right now. I feel like but I'm excited to see like, you know, our kindergartners. That's going to be really neat, because if you go into a kindergarten classroom right now, oh my gosh, it's unreal the way that they are approaching math and the way that they're talking about it, and it is quite amazing. So,
Great.
yeah,
I was
that's on our
wondering if, well, because the thing that I see so much, like at high schools, that's like the biggest area where kids have such a fixed mindset. You know, that I don't do math, I'm not math, I'm bad at math.
Yes.
And that's, you don't hear that about so many of the other subjects. Do you know, does the program kind of like build in any kind of focus on growth mindset, like at all? Or is that just, you try to inherently?
Actually, there is, do you want to?
I'll do that.
Okay. The program builds in math practices, and so like every lesson, it identifies the content standards, and then it also identifies the math practice standards. So, which would speak a lot to your kind of like your work study, you know, that habits of mind approaching math. But I don't know how much teachers are focusing. I mean, I think it's embedded because we do a lot of work with work study practices and using that language. But I think as we get more comfortable with the program, like within a lesson, it actually points out like, here is where you highlight this practice.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like
and
perseverance.
so, right. So I wouldn't say that teachers are all focusing on that part yet, because we're still working on how to pace this lesson so you get through the concept, which is our biggest focus right now. But like Eureka says, you know, your first year you'll do the concept development and fluency if you can, and then every year you'll get better at pacing and fitting it all in kind of thing. So it is embedded in there. We'll get, Zach?
So, I'm sorry, one other quick question is, so the teachers we have that are on their second year with this, are they, because the survey results don't necessarily isolate if you went to them and asked them specifically, but are they getting a lot more confident, are they getting more comfortable with it, and are they starting to advance through and get a little bit deeper with it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
They're those are our teacher leaders for sure, that help out with when we can't answer the questions, or it's the front line basically of a lot of our grade levels are doing planning together, and those are the teachers that are like, well, last year we did this and this worked out really well, or oh, watch out for this, or they're the ones who are able to look a few lessons ahead and say, okay, I know it seems like your kids aren't getting it right now, don't come back, it comes back to it in a couple of lessons, don't stay here, you know, keep moving. And so they're really instrumental in their teams, and because of the teachers that we have on staff, it doesn't just stay at those teams. Like, we actually did a lot of shifting last year, which worked out for our benefit. So we have like, I think every single grade level has an experienced Eureka teacher on it except for grade 2. So that's pretty cool.
And like grade 1, I can speak to grade 1. They're a whole module ahead of where they were last year. So pacing is hard with Eureka because it's really rigorous and it's really rich in material. And so they're they were really excited. I met with them last week, and they're a whole module ahead, which puts them on track for actually being able to finish the grade one program, which they didn't do last year. So that's exciting.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very
job.
much.
Thank you,
Yes.
Jess, for pulling up the presentation.
You did. We
Yeah, I'll let her know. So, anyway, first of all, I would just want to take a moment and thank Heidi and Erica. I know how hard you guys work and how busy you are during the day, and to be able to put this together and to do all that you do to see this increase in achievement, I think is great. So kudos to you guys. And remind me never to follow them again. I'm going to be so underwhelming. No. All right, so basically, back to your points, some of the questions that you were asking. We've been working over the last year, since I presented with these two last year at this board, we did a lot of outreach to different districts. And the same things that they're telling you were the same things I heard from districts who had been implementing Eureka for the last 2-3 years, that the confidence grows over time, that after the first 3 to 4 months, which are kind of crazy and busy, that eventually people start to get it, both kids and adults, and the learning is just outstanding, and that kids are doing things now that they haven't done in the past. So that was one piece. We talked about, what was the question about students?
Growth mindset.
Yes. So we're piloting this in 3 of our other districts here in the SAU, Pembroke, Epsom, and Allenstown. And I've been talking to a lot of the teachers because I've been setting up a lot of the PD for them with a consultant. And what they've been telling me, all the teachers, they've said, you know, as students continue in this program, for example, when they're at after school help, where last year they would have just given up and said, oh, I can't do this. They're showing some resiliency, some grit, and they're not sitting here and just saying, I can't do it. They're saying, oh wait, I have a strategy. So it goes right back to everything that these two had said. It's consistent across the board, which I think is a fantastic thing. So, on to my part now. What I love about what they just did with their STAR data is that they showed a piece of what's happening here in Deerfield. And I took a different view, a different piece. I looked at the state accountability data. And so before I show you the data, which is all public, you've seen it all, I want to show you a little something that comes from the mouths of our kids, from the minds of our faculty and administration here. So if you'll just bear with me while I get that ready, put a little something together for you guys. And I hope it's loud enough. Every moment is a snapshot. Just one picture in the photo album of life. Some moments are fleeting and unmemorable, while others define who and what we are. At Deerfield Community School, we live our mission, which is to create a supportive, welcoming culture that embraces individuality while championing the value of teamwork and friendship. Our goal is to provide the very best in academic instruction, emotional guidance, and social development for each child as they learn, grow, and experience life.
You need to try your hardest, and it doesn't matter how good you are at something or what level you are at something, but it really just depends on how hard you try.
Or care for others and their opinions, and also to care about like my work and how that comes first for everything else.
Most of the important things I've learned is probably being kind to one another. We're all like one family, I guess, and all the teachers and like everyone are like close and learn to like grow as a person. I've been really close with all the teachers, and they've definitely helped me learn throughout my years here.
I've learned that even if you're not the best at academics or anything else, it's all about the community. It's about friends, helping people, and just learning.
Everything I've learned from how to learn, that's where you can apply it to anything.
With all of the different mandates and labels placed upon schools through federal and state accountability, large-scale testing garners the most attention, with zero evidence showing how these measures support student growth and learning. Despite all the initiatives, programs, and demands that our changing society has placed on educators, DCS faculty and staff remain committed to our mission. We see data as a snapshot in time, and we use it to align our curriculum, grow as instructional teams, focus our professional development in areas of need, and constantly improve our practice to best meet the needs of our students.
I've definitely grown a lot as a person. I used to be shy when I was little. Now I've come out of my shell a lot, and I'm a lot more outgoing. That's kind of given me a lot more opportunity. I've definitely grown a lot. Like last year, I wasn't getting the best of grades, and this year I've gotten a lot better grades and like understanding a lot more. And also, I'm not as afraid to like talk to adults as I was before.
If you just like memorize everything all the time, that works. But then what happens when you just don't know? Not everyone's good at math, or not everyone's good at language arts. Everyone has a strong point and weakness, and you just gotta find that strong point. Every student in the school like wants to learn, wants to succeed, do everything that they can to be the best.
Shut this off before the next video plays. So I asked kids what they thought was important. I asked kids what they've grown, how much they've grown. Not one kid said, my state test. Not one kid said that's what was important. But every kid, and you heard it from their mouths, talked about how academics were important, how growth was important, how much they've grown, how community and family and all of these other things that Deerfield offers are important. I think it's important for you guys to hear that. I think it's important for the community to hear that. Because so often we do focus in on test scores. And we forget about all the other things that happen in school. So, that being said, I spent the last few months putting together some data dashboards for each of our schools. And I've presented these to the faculty. We've started to dig into them. Data is only as good as what we do with it. And so we've started to dig in. And I know that between Kristen and Heidi and Erica, they do a lot of data work. And certain teams, specific teams, do a lot of data work. So I just put some stuff together, compiled it in a way that's easy to read, easy to see. We look at both grade level assessment scores by grade level as well as by cohort. So we'll just kind of show you what this dashboard looks like. And I think it's important to note that we're still using this internally. We are still going through this. The staff is looking through this. So those folks with the SAU 53 tag are using this. So we start here with just some basic school enrollment information, budgets, all the stuff that, again, everything comes out of the state, the DOE, based on October 1 reporting. Then we get into cost per pupil versus the state. When it's on a computer in front of you, it's a little easier to see. Get into free and reduced lunch rates, again, compared to the state over time. We have average daily attendance. I have to update that. It's been a couple of months, but that's pretty darn good. Then we start to get into assessment data. The first set of charts here are based on the SAS. I didn't pull in comparative years because we've had 3 different tests over the last 4 years. I think that's a really important note. What you'll see is, like Heidi and Erica said, there are times where where the data is right on par with the state. There are times where it's lower. There are times when it's higher. So when we went through this with the teachers, they thought that the scores would be up and down. And again, I think part of that's indicative of a group, a changing test. and a lot of different or a lot of other variables. Again, I don't want to go through this too much. I want to leave this with you guys to be able to dig into when you have time. But again, you see some areas where we're well above the state, and that's always a good sign. Then what we did is we started looking at achievement levels. This is by grade level. The next section is by cohort. And what you'll see is we go through each of the levels of proficiency as defined by the state. And so what you would want to see ultimately is that the higher levels of achievement are growing over time. Sometimes you see that, sometimes you don't. But I think it's interesting to watch and see the way either a cohort works and grows over time or at a particular grade level. There are some interesting finds in here if you look really deeply where you'll see some grade levels every year, no matter what, just hit it out of the park. It's wild to see that. Then, so again, this is by grade level, and it's every year for the last 4 years. By grade, ELA, and math.
So it's the current grade, and then their last 4 years.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So this was the 7th grade last year, 7th grade the year before. Yep. And then this is the cohort-based data. This takes into account any student who has taken any state assessment over the past 4 years. My goal is over the summer to add the 5th year, and then what we'll do is we'll drop off the bottom year after that. But I think 5 years is a good span to look at. So you'll see, you can't see growth over time here because this is the current graduating class. They've taken one state assessment, class of 2019. 2020, they've taken 2. You'll see fairly consistent in ELA and in math. Similar, grown in their above proficient, but shrunk a little bit in their proficient. And again, so as you go through this, you will see how cohorts have grown over time. And so we've got everything that we have on these kiddos from a state perspective. The biggest point that I can make about this, and I said it very clearly in the video, this is a snapshot in time. It is one piece of data. Heidi and Erica provided the STAR assessment data. That's another piece of data. That's data that's given 3 times a year. And so again, the goal is to build a bigger picture, but I don't think we can forget about all those peripheral things that are so important to the growth of a student, the growth of a child, and the growth of a community. Questions?
I think at some point, are there plans currently to make this available to the public? You said it's still internal at this point.
So I want to be able to add that 5th year in because I think it gives us a wider breadth. And so I definitely want to do that before it goes out to the public. I'm happy to provide this data. It's public. It's all public. This is just put into a format that I think is easy to read. And I'm happy to provide that to anyone who might want it. They can certainly reach out to me and I'll print this out for them. But I do want to make sure that SAU 53 staff here gets a chance to continue to dig into it. I think that that's really, that's the most important part.
All right. So I guess we got to chew on it for a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot here. I think there's a lot with their STAR data, and I think that would be really neat data to put next to this. And to look at both. You've got cohort and grade level data from both, so
I have one question, just kind of a general question. In terms of, so the state, that's a required test. Every kid in the state
Correct.
took it. So your population is dealing with all of the kids within New Hampshire. How many kids within New Hampshire take STAR?
You know what? I don't know the number to that. I can look to find out, but it's really, it's a subscription that you purchase.
Right.
So, and a lot of districts do it for benchmarking purposes. Some will do it more frequently, some will do it less frequently. So it's hard to get a really good gauge as to what the comparison would be like in that sense.
But it'd be, and I don't know if STAR is New Hampshire only, or if it's, so it could be much larger sample.
Correct.
I'd love to see the number if they're willing to share. Like you're scoring against 200,000 other kids, or you're scoring against.
Theoretically, it's not what their data is showing you is your proficiency against.
It is.
The 100%, yeah.
It is comparing.
Yeah, but the test group size.
Oh, it's just
You
total
wanna
test
know the
percentage,
size
it's
of
gonna
the
be
test
millions, right? And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I think that'd be interesting.
That'd be cool to see.
Yeah, we can get that.
if you're 75% proficient against
How
10
many
million
kids?
kids, that's,
Because the number of students in New Hampshire is what, 200,000, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. And at each grade level, it's fewer than that, so it's a pretty small sample size in the large grand scheme of things.
Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Can I shut this down?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Nikolai, while you're,
Sure. Which one is it?
I think it's all.
There we go.
Those are quick.
We'll catch up another time.
CIP, Southern New Hampshire, thank you for waiting. You want to come up and join us? Yeah.
Holy volume.
So you guys have talked to pretty much everybody in town now, right?
Couple times.
All right.
So we sent out an email. I'm hoping that everybody got that. Hi.
When did you send it out?
We sent that out to
That Patty,
Jim, and we just figured it was forwarded to the rest of the group.
did it get shared?
March 6th.
Did it get shared with the rest of the group?
I don't know if Kathy sent it out.
I can't email the whole group as a
Board member.
right as a board member.
All right.
Right. Administration.
Well, we'll review. Well, first you have a new board member, so let me allow us to introduce ourselves. So Sylvia Von Aulock, Cam Perlman, we're from Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, and we've been typically we represent the planning office in Deerfield. So we're hired to do that on a contract basis annually. And this past year, we were hired to help the town update their CIP because it hadn't been updated in 10 years or something.
Yeah.
So just a little background there. The school is very interested in updating the CIP, and correct me if I'm wrong, but because you want to utilize impact fees for projects. And you can only do that unless you have an updated capital improvement program, CIP. Sorry, I'm using acronyms and I'm not explaining. That's always irritating. So CIP, capital improvement plan. So the first draft of your projects came to us. Each tab is a project. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so Cam and I reviewed those. We also reviewed the towns and have also sat down and had this same sort of hand-holding kind of meeting with them. And so I'll just review. So each one of your projects at this point I would consider is very conceptual. And here's why. It needs a lot more information. For example, when you look at any one of these projects, and this is outlined in that email, what you have to think to yourself is, one, does it include a timeline? What year is the equipment to be purchased or the project to be started? How long will that project take? Is it a phased project? So what's the start date? What's the completion date? Does it include a reasonable and new cost estimate? If it includes a cost estimate, what year is that from and where did that come from? So I think one of your 10 projects maybe had a dollar figure. None of your projects has anything about timeline. So we really need to know that because a capital improvement program is over a 6-year period. So we need to know when does every project start and finish?
So in terms of timeline, do you mean in terms of the prioritization within the list itself, or in our visualization of when it's going to happen within those 6 years?
Or how long it's gonna take to do?
When does it start, and when is the completion date?
Okay. I wasn't clear on that.
It's also good to prioritize. There's also so Cam, do you have, maybe pass out the new worksheet? So we thought this was sort of
You have one?
clear, but yeah. And I don't know if we have enough, so grab one and maybe the last people have to share, but. So I'll review that in a second. But certainly, for example, funding, what's the funding source? Has that been identified? If the project is due to growth, has that growth been justified? Would the information be clearer if a photo or a diagram or a plan be included?
When you say has that growth been justified, what are the qualifications for justifying growth? Like, is it just the population growth within the existing structure?
It has to do with the demands, so the demands of the, population growth, yes, definitely, but also, I would say that could also include the demands have changed, so that's a different sort of growth if you think of it that way.
So would that require like a backup study for like analysis of the amount of time that the gym has been used as compared to 5 years ago?
Yes.
It requires that level of in-depth?
It would have to have some sort of measurement, some kind of measurement that says 15% more users or something like that.
Okay.
So photos, diagrams. If a professional engineer, architect, or contractor is needed to complete the work, needed to create the cost estimate, or even outline alternatives, have they been called in for informational purposes and referenced? So let me just go over I'm just going to randomly pick one of these. Roof replacement. All right, so right now this is what we know is this has been, so you can follow along in your worksheet. So there's a department, and in here on this particular project, it's school district prepared by the school board. The project name is the Deerfield Community School roof replacement, so we have that. And then an evaluation criteria where there's a point score that's been chosen. And in this particular case for the roof replacement, does it address emergency or public safety needs? The point score was 4. 0 is low, 5 is high, so I think that's reasonable. Corrects a deficiency in service or facility, it was 3. And results in long-term cost savings, 5. I think just so there's no damages, so that all works. The rest of it, there was no score, which is reasonable. Nobody totaled the score, so, and that's pretty common on all these, so we'd ask a total score.
I think we were confused before, is it we were going to score it or the planning board was going to score it?
They'll score it probably too, but you should score your own, so people know what you think of your project. And that might help you create a priority list of your own projects. So is this project due to growth? This one says no, and that's fair. This one actually has a total cost estimate at $180,000. But the source of funds, no funding source was checked.
But we have trust funds we could draw off of, and we also have impact. I mean, the impact fees are close to that amount at this point.
We can also budget for it if it's a number.
So you just have to tell us what your thoughts are.
Okay. I mean, there's like 4 different places we could get the money.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So when you have your whole list of projects and all your dollar amounts, you'll know where you know, because just have to determine for which ones are going to be covered under general funds, under grants, you know, whatever. If it's other, you have a, you know.
Are we obligating ourselves at that point to only draw it out of those funds? So if we say, we're gonna appropriate it through the general budget, and then something happens and we need to go to one of our trust funds because the roof has to be replaced, are we obligating ourselves to a certain path for funding by?
You're letting the folks know, whoever utilizing this as a tool, the capital improvement program plan as a tool, you're letting them know what your intent is. I think obligate is strong, but your intent has been shown. Okay?
So all of the funding with pretty much everything for the school is either a warrant article,
Yep.
budget, general budget, or drawing off of the trust fund,
Right.
or impact fees.
Right.
All of which are kind of managed through this board. This is the plan is for the planning board, and I thought it was specific to the use of the impact fees rather than all of the different things that were.
The plan is for the town. So
Right.
the plan will utilized by you folks, but also it helps the town, whoever is using the budget committee, board of selectmen, the planning board oversees the capital improvement program. So they'll pass it on, they'll have a public meeting, it'll be voted on, and they'll pass it when they feel it's up to snuff, they'll pass it on to the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee and whoever will be reviewing it. And so it's really a tool. Okay? So, I mean, I just, the straight-face test says you need all of these things, because if you're going to go in front of a voter group or whoever, and it may be 10% is impact fees and 90% is general fund or other, you can include that in the discussion. All right. Yes.
So you've mentioned the number of 6 years. I'm not sure that, and maybe I'm wrong, but as we sit down and realistically lay out or plan out these 10 different projects, I'm not sure that we realistically plan on getting them all in 6 years. So should we be, maybe, I don't, we haven't had this discussion yet, clearly. Should we really only be proposing projects that we see in 6 years? Because that will then give us the information to do what you're asking, where we can lay out where the funding is, or at least more clearly. Or I thought what we heard last time was that we should be looking into the future. Some of these things are down the road. Do we leave those off for now and then we add them later? Or
there's no problem with having additional years. Like you'd have your own spreadsheet or a table of some sort that shows, further down the line. There's no reason not to have a long-term plan. But in the capital improvement program itself, in the actual 6-year spreadsheet, we'll only show what's happening in 6 years. So that could be on a more longer-term sort of table. But
kind of like the engineering study that we had done that addresses some longer term.
But eventually, when we get all these projects pulled together, then Cam and I will pull together a spreadsheet that will just be 6 years.
Okay. So the most effective thing that we can do for you is to complete the forms, get a solid idea of where the budget is coming from for these, and pass them over to you guys, and then you'll take it from there. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But let's finish this. Hopefully not too painful. Let's just finish and go through.
Want to make sure we're doing it right.
So the next part is this project supported by a department, committee, or board? And we included a new item here. Please provide the date the committee or boards specified above voted to support. So this is important so that if someone asks you, Well, when did you vote to support this? You have the record. And you can show through minutes of the meeting or something like that, that it was voted on.
Can the school board be that
Yeah.
group you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of funny because you've nominated it, but you can also have the principal nominate it, whatever. It's really up to you how you want to do this. All right, so that's new. Detailed description and purpose of the project. Almost in, I would say in all of your explanation, I'll just read this one. There's an ABC here. Roof was found during an engineering study to have leaks and will need replacement within 5 years. So that's the timeline we got, was within 5 years. It is largely intact with minor periodic leaks. Emergency winter repair of a failed roof would be more expensive than planning ahead and budgeting for a summer repair. So that's actually not too bad, but also what we'd like to see is exactly, is it in-kind replacement? Are you doing different materials? What are some of those specifications? Now, and we would have, what we would see like attached would be such and such roofing company came and gave you an estimate. And if it's only part of the school roof, which part, and maybe a diagram that shows that.
That gets to be amazingly time intensive.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
You may say, okay, so why are you asking for all this with a 6 year, let's say it's in the 6th year out. Okay, I might have some forgiveness, like 4, 5, and 6, but those first few years, you really want to have some detail.
Okay.
I was gonna say, it's very difficult for us to have a contractor say, what's this roof gonna cost in 6 years? Unless we build in
You can,
10% of inflation or
10%'s a little much, but although petroleum products did have a time when it was like that. But you can find out, well, what did it cost? What would a roof cost last year? What does it cost this year? You can make some estimations on inflation. And you can always go to other schools, for example, that have had roof replacements. Hey, who did you have done it? Who did it for you, and what did it cost you? What was the square foot sort of thing? That kind of stuff.
So the engineering study that we had done is where we drew that $180,000.
And what year was that?
Last year.
Okay, so great, and that should be included, and that the whole estimate could just be attached.
Okay.
Something like that.
So you can list it as current replacement cost would be this. And
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the engineer's assessment. They didn't have, the engineering company didn't have roof, they didn't have.
No, but where-
Come out and say it's X amount of dollars, the engineering company.
That's pretty good, though. That is actually really good. Yeah, it just needs to be attached.
depending on where you get that information from, either having a contractor come out
Most of the
and
stuff
give
we
it
submitted was triggered from the engineering report, so a lot of
Right.
it had is in the engineering report, which is.
Right. Which you guys have, right? We've given you the engineer. I think I've sent you the engineering.
Yeah, that Excel
It's like 150 pages.
It was.
I have an Excel sheet that's like 3 tabs.
No, there was, that was,
the full report.
We'll
from
make
next
sure
year.
you have that if you.
Okay. that'd be
Yeah.
great.
Well, we don't have the budget to review that,
Okay.
so we really need.
How much more budget would you need to review that?
Yeah. Well.
well,
Well.
I don't know. I can't say offhand, but
Okay.
so we really need you to provide the information.
Okay.
So the other thing we've added here is we now have more of an explanation of what we need. So please give detailed explanation of the project, justification for the project, which you do in this one actually, and please attach the additional so-and-so. And then number 9, time frame. So start date, completion date, and if it's phased, please describe that phasing. So this is our new, which we sent you guys.
Yeah.
A new one, and hopefully that will help. We did the same, we walked through this also with the town staff. They had the same sort of homework to do, if you will.
Okay.
I get the feeling that we're not grossly unprepared for this, but this is not. We had been talking about like a March or a spring finalizing for this.
Yeah, that's-
We're not talking the same way. This is gonna take a long time. I mean, either it's going to shrink our projects down to the things that we have enough information for, or it's to get all these people in here, looking at these things, it's gonna take a significant amount of time to get the information that I think you're looking for. So
It could
I was
be.
misunderstanding earlier, I think, where we are and where you are, I think.
Right.
What I'm saying.
right, I imagine.
I think that's just the observation.
Well, one thing is to go through the 10 projects and think, what are the priorities, for the next 6 years? So really create a table for yourselves and a timeline, and what's in the next 6 years. The other ones, and I would focus on those.
Okay.
But more often than not, I think what we found in some of the descriptions, so like for example, the solar panels. An investment in solar panels would pay for itself within X amount of years. That wasn't filled out, and therefore it would be a net gain for the district. So that's a little bit of justification, but it doesn't tell us the panels, like how many panels, what.
Alright, so that's definitely, there's all stuff that we're working on. We're actually doing an LED study, and a lot of the things that were sent over to you, we had an engineer come in and kind of give us guidance, but didn't get into the distinct detail that comes with basically kind of a proposal.
Right.
In terms of, so this is our first time through the CIP, so I apologize in terms of my lack of understanding of it. Is there typically someone who is retained by an organization like the town or a school to just do this professionally in terms of you guys serve as the auditing body of the projects that come in, the school has somebody who goes through these and helps fill all of this out, or is it just kind of because the planning board did a kind of bare bones, as you referred to, budget on a CIP that how does it usually function? Is there usually like a kind of soup to nuts model?
So I think we brought a few examples of what Chester did.
Okay.
They're not perfect. I would like to see more detail, but it gives you a better idea of what was submitted. So I didn't bring enough copies for everyone, but certainly, where's that roofing one?
Did they do it by retaining an engineer who helped them facilitate it, or did they do it by volunteers, talking to professionals, or what approach was taken?
That's a good question. I wasn't involved with that part. Do you know?
No, I think we played a similar role like what we're doing now, and I'm assuming the different departments, the fire and thing, they would use outside.
I would love to see a sample of kind of what you guys are looking for.
So here, please pass that.
Those are all the same.
And, oh, good. So here's the roof. Yeah. And that's one. What is that one?
Heating and cooling system.
All right. So what you have there isn't that much further along, but if you go to the description, you'll see that, and of course I passed you my own copy as well. So just to read that, so also a roof, right? Over the past several years, we've experienced some roof leaks over the gym and cafeteria. So now we know exactly where it is. The snow loads, and they talk about that. The leaks introduce water, so they talk about that. Visual inspection indicate all the base flashings are beginning to chip and crack. So some detail about what's happening. The flat roofs over the gym and cafeteria are approximately, now we have the square footage. This will require an engineering study to assess roof load capacity. In addition, there will need to be design and development of an RFP.
Request for proposal.
request for proposal, thank you, I lost it for a second. We are also reviewing possibilities to include a solar project in this build-out. So now they show the company that completed a roof inspection, and they give the year, and the estimated the roof had another 10 to 20 years of life. Therefore, we continue to monitor the situation. Now, and they have for $225,000. It still isn't perfect, but it gives you a little more information. What I still don't know is exactly what they're going to do. So is this a full roof replacement, replacing in kind?
They got a solar in there too.
So, and plus solar. So I'm not sure, but it gives you just a little bit more, and you can do your own critique now. And
But was that acceptable to move forward with the CIP?
This was acceptable for Chester.
Is it acceptable for Deerfield?
No, because I'm now involved. And I'm worse. I just think, just remember, if you use that, and this is my list. So remember, everything that you're working on, it's not me that's going to be voting on this, right? You're going to have somebody voting on it. And you have to think, is this enough information for the voter?
I guess that was my question, was the audience here is not, I guess I was under the impression that this was going to be sort of a starting point and then more information would be flushed out as we went through. But really what you're saying is that we need to produce a narrative with enough information to convince a voter to vote for this. Or maybe it's the planning board, but it's an individual person who's going to be reading this and deciding whether to vote to recommend this project. And that person is somebody in this town that is going to be making this choice. Is that true?
Yes and no. That would be yes for year one. But it is a person who's, like the planning board, is going to vote to move it ahead. So they have to know enough, enough about the projects that they feel confident in what's been provided.
Are they going to have to choose between this project and that project from the select board?
No.
It's just, does this project have enough merit to move on?
Is this enough information to justify your impact fees? Is this enough information to justify, that you're saying this is a project of growth?
And we are kind of like a chapter within the CIP, right? We're autonomous within the CIP. I mean, it's the town. But
You're a section.
The school is an autonomous chapter.
You're your own thing,
Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we have some things to do.
So, like I said, the further out the years, the more it can be, you can have a cost to be determined.
Okay.
I'm not saying never have to be determined, but have the phrase to be determined, that you are thinking of the cost, you don't know it yet. But you want it as a place card holder. There's no reason why you can't have that, but at least have a description of what's there, what's going on, because some of the descriptions were just so vague.
Yes.
Or it didn't have material. I mean, I didn't know what was happening.
We were throwing it at the wall because we've never done it before.
Sure.
And we are not professional roofers, solar, electrical.
So do we have a new due date? Because this, next month is not realistic for this. So what are we really talking about here?
Well, that's the question, right? So,
What's the rest of the town doing? Let's.
We had the same conversation with them.
I imagine so.
They're at the same place as you are. I'm now hoping that I have something by May.
Okay.
From everyone that I can say, okay, this is a D since I'm in a school. I want a B.
So, I think a question Jim had, is there firms that can be contracted to mediate between us as a board and you as the planners to help really make sure that we're getting.
Can we retain somebody to just fill this out for us?
We go through and give them a list of priorities. They go through with the contractors. They go through and they help build out these.
Well,
projects.
do you have a building facility manager or something like that?
We do, but he's busy.
So that's someone who would sit down with your facility manager and go over all of these projects and say, okay, we need a little more information. And I would think that's an hour or two. I really don't think it's that much more painful.
Okay.
Oh, I'm getting an eyeball. Is that an eyeball?
That was, I'm suppressing a yawn. Not you, it's me.
Just based on the 10 things that we gave you, those are large projects. So I think for Mike to sit down and be, and I have a pretty good idea what his response is going to be when they say, Mike, give me a detail on the costs and installation of a solar array on the roof.
No, he won't do that. But
No.
can you pick, what do you want in the next 6 years first? What are the highest priority projects?
Yes, we can do that.
So that's number one, timeline.
Great.
Number two is a little bit more on just fleshing out what it is you want built.
It's making a new subcommittee is what it's doing.
Yes, it is.
So when we get into roles and responsibilities.
Fortunately, we haven't done that yet.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, we have.
I mean, you can always hire someone. You can contract an engineering firm. You can contract the engineering firm that you already had,
to fill it
right?
out.
And say, you know what, we need you to contract you for a little more fleshing out of these projects and
Okay.
helping you with priorities.
That answers our question. Excellent. So we will aim for having something to you in May.
That would be fantastic.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
But this is a great start for a group that's never done it before. This is exactly what I probably should have expected. The town's going through the same thing, so it's not that this is.
We're better than the town, so.
When I go home and my kids say, "What grade did you get tonight?" I tell them that I got a
2.
D.
Well,
Yeah,
you know.
At level 2.
So, but your effort, was, you're willing to chat about it, so why don't we raise it to a C minus?
You're still a level 2.
We're still at a 2. We have some homework to do, some formatives to do.
I can do corrections.
Can we have a 2 with distinction?
And I don't know if you could just send who's ever on the committee those notes.
I will make sure that.
I'll just pass this along to whoever wants that.
Yes, I'll take the list.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks for sitting through our presentation.
Straightening us out.
It is pizza time. Can we take, everybody okay with the?
Well, we stayed for pizza time. That's what we stayed for.
Is everybody okay?
Yes.
Yeah.